Solo fans, today I bring you episode 3 of season 3. Grab your favorite drink, sit back, and enjoy. Thank you for your legendary comments and continued support. Let's aim for 3,000 likes on this video. Love you all, and let's get started. But first, make sure you've seen the previous episodes as the events are closely connected. We pick up from where we left off. The members of the Knights Guild had come to visit JinWoo to invite him to participate in a high-level raid. So what happened next? JinWoo welcomed him in. Jung-soo introduced himself and immediately showed JinWoo footage of a new gate that had appeared in Busan. It was massive and emitted a tremendous amount of magical energy. Surprisingly, it wasn't classified as an S-rank gate, but rather the most powerful A-rank gate Korea had seen so far. Jung-soo explained that the Hunters Association wouldn't allow them to enter because they didn't have any S-rank hunters. That's why they needed JinWoo. As an incentive, he offered him a higher than usual reward. While S-rank hunters typically receive 10% of the raid's earnings, he offered him 20%. But JinWoo responded, "I want 50%. Jung-soo was shocked at how high that was. JinWoo reasoned that he wasn't joining as a solo hunter, but as a guild, he deserved more. Jung-soo tried to negotiate, raising the offer to 40%, but JinWoo stood firm, 50% or nothing. Jung-soo reluctantly agreed on the condition that JinWoo would handle the boss and all high-tier monsters. JinWoo accepted. Jung-soo informed him that the gate had opened a week ago, so they had to leave today to prepare for entry tomorrow. JinWoo said he'd meet them there as he had another appointment. Meanwhile, Yoon-tae noticed something strange. JinWoo's shadow was moving on its own. He mentioned it to his friend, who didn't believe him and asked if he'd been drinking. At that moment, JinWoo's phone rang. It was an unknown number, so he excused himself to answer. To his surprise, it was his mother. She had a new phone and called because she wanted to hear his voice. She apologized if she interrupted him, but JinWoo assured her he was free and happy to talk. They agreed to have dinner together that evening. The next day, the Knights Guild gathered at the raid site. The gate had appeared on the beach. All the hunters were equipped with excellent gear, but they couldn't start until JinWoo arrived. Jung-soo was worried about his delay and regretted not bringing him along the night before. With only 5 minutes left before the raid began, JinWoo was still at home. He stepped outside, saw the cloudy weather, and wondered if his sister had taken the umbrella. Then it was time. He used his shadow exchange ability and instantly appeared at the meeting point. Even he was stunned by how massive the gate was. Elsewhere, the scene shifts to Gina's school. A group of students were sent to retrieve plaster statues from the art room. They were annoyed by the assignment. When they arrived, the room was dusty and felt abandoned. Suddenly, one of the students noticed a small gate open right in the middle of the room. Without fear, he approached and said there was nothing to worry about. Only hunters can enter these gates and nothing can come out. The others felt reassured. But then a crack formed in the gate. A massive hand burst out and grabbed the student by the head. He struggled to break free but couldn't. His friends tried to help him, but it was too late. His skull was crushed before their eyes. Then the rest of the monster emerged from the gate. Within seconds, the room was filled with blood. The 3 students were slaughtered without mercy. These creatures were from the orc race. Although not very intelligent, they're natural-born hunters. When they smell blood, they go into a frenzy. The group that came through was meant only for scouting, but when they sensed prey, they couldn't resist. One of them ran back to alert the rest of the army while the others began to slaughter. The classroom door shattered. The orcs stormed out into the hallway where students were casually chatting. Suddenly, they heard a loud crash from the art room. Before they could even react, an orc stood before them, gripping a huge axe, ready to turn the school into a massacre zone. Back to JinWoo, he was analyzing the strength of his team. There were 20 B-rank hunters and 13 A-rank hunters. He was impressed by the large number of skilled fighters. Suddenly, someone called out to him from behind. When he turned around, he found himself surrounded by a group of hunters, clearly fans, who were all excited and eager to rely on him. JinWoo hadn't expected such a warm welcome. At that moment, Yerim stepped in and asked him to give JinWoo some space to rest. She introduced herself as the head healer of the Knights Guild. Once the team was fully assembled, the guild leader, Jung-soo, began explaining the plan. He told them he would be leading the raid. This didn't sit well with some of the hunters.
they preferred JinWoo to be leader. Jung-soo clarified that Hunter Sung JinWoo would instead be covering their rear to ensure their safety. One of the rookies, perhaps too excited, spoke up arrogantly, saying, "Are we that weak that we need someone to protect us?" Jung-soo immediately apologized to JinWoo, explaining that this kind of energy was normal for new recruits, and asked him not to take offense. JinWoo smiled and replied calmly, "It just means they're confident in themselves. It's fine." Jung-soo checked his phone. It was time. The team set out toward the gate. Meanwhile, at the emergency center, everything was normal until they received a terrifying call. A student reported monsters appearing at her school. The caller was a young girl hiding in a bathroom stall, crying and literally shaking with fear. She said all her friends were dead and she barely escaped. The staff member on the phone tried to calm her and assured her that hunters were on the way. She told the girl to stay hidden until they arrived. These words gave the student hope. Maybe she could survive this. Then the staff member asked her to describe the monsters. The girl said they were green, humanoid, and had hideous faces. As she spoke, one of the monsters suddenly appeared outside the bathroom. Hearing the description, the staff member realized they were orcs. She urgently told the girl to run, explaining that orcs have an extremely sharp sense of smell. But it was too late. The monster found her, and what happened next was horrifying. The staff member heard everything. She was devastated, helpless to do anything. Some students managed to escape, but most were slaughtered. Many others were still hiding in classrooms. The orcs had blocked off the only staircase leading out and started a brutal search. On the top floor, a group of guards had barricaded themselves in a classroom, using chairs and tables as their only defense. Suddenly, the door shattered. The team leader of the orcs entered, his body soaked in human blood, his weapon dripping. One student tried to run through the back door, only to be met by another orc. Before he could react, an axe split his head in two. Then the orc leader sensed magical energy coming from one of the students. He pointed at her and ordered, "Kill her first." He was referring to Gina, JinWoo's sister, who was hiding silently, praying her brother would come save her. The orc ignored everyone else and headed straight for her. Gina closed her eyes, ready to die, but nothing happened. When she opened her eyes, a shadow stood between her and the monster. It was one of JinWoo's shadows, stopping the orc at the last second. Gina was overjoyed. She thought her brother had arrived. The shadow punched the orc so hard it flew through the ceiling. The orc leader was stunned. This creature was an orc too, but far stronger. 3 more shadows appeared, assigned by JinWoo to protect his sister during his absence. The scene shifts to the gate located in Busan. Jung-soo had gathered all the hunters, preparing them for the monster that was rapidly approaching. It was a 2-headed ogre, a giant compared to the rest of them, wielding an enormous axe. The ogre charged forward and swung its massive weapon with terrifying force. Jung-soo braced himself, activating a powerful shield to defend against the blow. The moment the axe struck, the ground beneath Jung-soo shattered from the impact. But his shield held strong. Seeing the opportunity, Jung-soo gave the signal to Yeon-tae, who immediately leapt into action. He climbed up the ogre's giant axe, gripped his sword tightly, and slashed one of the ogre's eyes. The monster roared in pain, now unable to see clearly. This gave the rest of the hunters a chance to attack. The mages joined in too, launching spells in unison. The Knights Guild relied on teamwork, and together they overwhelmed the creature. The ogre was reduced to ash from the combined assault. After the battle, they regrouped and to reorganize their formation. But Jung-soo looked worried. "This gate is stronger than I thought," he said. These ogres were known as grave guardians, which meant this dungeon was filled with zombies. That would make it much harder to clear. Soon, as expected, a horde of zombies began to appear. The hunters saw them coming and grew fearful. "Should we retreat?" some of them asked. But suddenly something strange happened. The zombies froze in place and began to retreat on their own. The hunters were confused. Monsters normally attack the moment they see humans, not retreat. What they didn't know was JinWoo was the reason. From a distance, JinWoo observed the scene, visibly disappointed. So this is it, he thought. This gate was weaker than he expected.
At that moment, JinWoo received a signal from his shadows guarding his sister. They had started consuming more mana than usual. Something was wrong. Without hesitation, he turned to Jeon-soo and said, "I have to go. There's an urgent matter I need to take care of." Jeon-soo objected. "If you leave now, we'll be in danger." JinWoo replied calmly, "I'll summon someone you can trust. He'll take my place and handle everything." Suddenly, Beru appeared beside him. The guild leader and all the hunters were shocked. They recognized him immediately, the same hand that had devastated everything on Jeju Island. JinWoo looked at them and said, "Since you know who he is, there's no need for introductions." He turned to Beru. "Protect the humans." Beru nodded. "Is there anything else, my lord?" JinWoo answered, "Do whatever you want as long as they're safe." Beru was thrilled. He had been waiting for this chance for a long time. The hunters, sensing his overwhelming power, suddenly felt like guests at their own raid, realizing they would have little to no role to play. JinWoo then summoned 20 more ants to assist Beru in this mission. Jeon-soo still looked uneasy. Yerem asked JinWoo, "Are you really going to leave all these monsters behind so easily?" JinWoo turned to her with a piercing glare and replied, "I could wipe them out instantly if I wanted to." The intensity of his words terrified them, and they immediately dropped the subject. JinWoo tried to use his shadow exchange ability to teleport, but it failed. The cooldown wasn't over yet, so he took off at lightning speed, sprinting toward the exit. Yeontae looked at Jeon-soo and asked, "What do we do now?" Jeon-soo replied, "For now, just hold your position." Meanwhile, JinWoo was growing more and more anxious. The signals from his shadows were fluctuating wildly, a clear sign that something dangerous was happening. As he made his way through the dungeon, a group of zombies blocked his path. Frustrated and furious, not wanting to waste any more time, he drew his weapons to fight. But suddenly, all the zombies knelt before him. JinWoo was stunned. Maybe I'm stronger than the one controlling them. He jumped over them and exited the gate. On the other side, his black dragon appeared in the sky. It was a majestic, fearsome sight. Everyone nearby pulled out their phones to record. They all knew who he was. Hunter Sin JinWoo. The dragon spread its massive wings, and JinWoo gave it a clear command. "Fly to my sister as fast as possible."
Back at the school, the shadows had begun to slaughter the orcs. The students stood frozen, shocked, unable to believe they had just escaped death. Some of them even assumed the shadows were enemies too. One of the shadow guards grabbed 2 orcs at once and smashed them into the ground, a single move that was enough to kill them instantly. But the students still couldn't fully process what was happening. The idea that these black, monstrous creatures had actually saved them seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Jenna was still anxiously waiting for her brother to arrive. She stepped forward, hoping to find him, but the shadow guarding her stopped her and gently pushed her back. Then, it pointed toward the door, signaling her that it wasn't over yet. More orcs were still outside. The scene shifts to inside the gate, where the Kraken's base had now reached the boss's chamber. The final seal had been broken. Now, the orc boss was free to step into the human world. At that moment, he received the report. Pre-orcs were helping humans, though they were of lower rank. The boss was furious. His elite squad had failed to eliminate mere ordinary orcs. Enraged by their failure, he grabbed his weapon and declared that he would handle it personally. Back at the Busan gate, the ants had launched their attack. The hunters were terrified, seriously considering retreating. They feared the ants might turn against them at any moment. Jeong-soo was still unable to make a decision. He didn't want to cancel the raid, but deep down, he was just as scared as everyone else. In the end, he decided to move forward, because what mattered most to him was the reputation of the guild. He didn't want people calling them cowards. Suddenly, Beru appeared in front of him. Jeong-soo froze in fear, completely unsure of what to do. He stammered, "Let's go." Beru didn't move. He clearly didn't like the commanding tone. So Jeong-soo corrected himself, this time with more respect. "Shall we go?" Beru vanished in the blink of an eye. Before Jiangsu could even turn his head, Barrett was back again, tossing something to the ground and then vanished once more. The hunters quickly gathered around their leader, asking, "Are we going after him?" Jiangsu replied, "Yes." But then they looked down and were stunned. At their feet was the head of the zombie squad leader, the strongest enemy in the dungeon, defeated by Beru in less than a second. Jiangsu's eyes lit up with excitement. "These remains? We could make a fortune selling them." He then asked, "Who among you wants to continue?" To his surprise, everyone stepped forward confidently, and Jiangsu realized he was the last one to move. Back at the school, the shadow soldier was struggling. This time, his opponent was the orc chief. The chief proudly flaunted the numerous tattoos on his body, each one representing a kill. He was clearly enjoying himself as he sliced through JinWoo's shadows, while they could only use their bodies to block his attacks, trying to delay him as much as possible. No matter how many times the shadows were destroyed, they regenerated, which began to frustrate the orc. "Is there no limit to your regeneration?" he shouted. But what truly bothered him was the voice inside his head, constantly commanding him to kill humans. The shadows were delaying him, and the more he was delayed, the stronger and more painful that voice became. So the chief decided to eliminate the source of the shadows, Jinna, JinWoo's sister. He ordered his orc warriors to attack, intending to exploit the brief moment when the shadows paused to regenerate. The shadows got distracted and the students began to back away in fear. Seizing the moment, the chief charged toward Jinna and grabbed her by the head and lifted her into the air. "I knew it. I could feel the magic energy coming from you," he said before tightening his grip, trying to crush her. At that very moment, JinWoo arrived. The orc chief felt his overwhelming presence. Fear instantly took over, and he dropped Jinna without realizing it. JinWoo was approaching at blinding speed. Jinna's friend rushed to her side to check on her, but the orc chief no longer cared about anyone else. His focus was locked on the terrifying power that was approaching. As JinWoo got closer, the chief warned his soldiers, "Something terrifying is coming. Prepare yourselves." Finally, JinWoo entered the room. Jinna was coughing from all the dust. Suddenly, a hand gently touched her head. It was her older brother, JinWoo. "Don't worry, I'm here now," he told her. The orc chief stood completely still, frozen with fear, unable to utter a single word. He was waiting for his turn, paralyzed. JinWoo stood there, a deadly aura radiating from his body. The chief tried to speak, but he raised his hand. "Shut your mouth, your turn is coming." Then he embraced his sister. Jinna broke into tears, and JinWoo apologized for being late. He turned to the other students. "Are you all okay?" They nodded. When he looked back at Jinna, he noticed bruises on her face. Without hesitation, he summoned Igris and ordered him to take care of his sister. "I'll deal with these orcs myself," JinWoo added. He also instructed him to get the other students out of the building. One of the orcs considered attacking, but JinWoo gave him a single chilling glare that immediately stopped him in his tracks. With the help of his black dragon, JinWoo and his shadows began evacuating the school. The orc chief now realized that this man in front of him was the master of the shadows, but he still couldn't comprehend how a human could speak their language. JinWoo's rage was building. He hadn't said a word since. The chief understood. There would be no negotiation. He gave the order to his followers, "Attack!" The orcs charged. JinWoo stepped forward. In a flash, he grabbed the first orc by the arm, slammed him into the ground, then crushed his head under his boot. He turned to the next two, used the telekinetic skill to smash them into each other, and then closed his fists, reducing them to bloody shreds. The remaining orcs went berserk and launched themselves at him, but JinWoo charged as well. And suddenly, body parts began flying. The fight was over almost instantly. He had taken down the entire horde with his bare hands. Only the orc chief remained. The chief asked, What? Who are? Before he could finish, JinWoo grabbed him by the mouth and slammed him against the wall. From there, the chief could see the hallway, filled with the corpses of students. JinWoo stared at him and asked, "Why are you all so eager to kill humans? What's the reason?" The chief replied, "A voice inside our heads. It tells us to kill humans." "And what about me? Doesn't it tell you to kill me too?" The chief begged for mercy, avoiding the question. JinWoo didn't like that. He summoned his weapon. At that moment, his entire body became cloaked in shadows. And then the King of Shadows himself appeared, and in one swift strike, he beheaded the orc chief.
Back with the Knights Guild, Yerim was arguing with an ant soldier who was trying to eat a monster corpse worth millions. The ant shoved her aside by accident, injuring her shoulder. Beru appeared immediately, scolding the ants and reminding her of the king's commands. She immediately froze in fear. Beru then healed Yerim's wounds, astonishing her. She couldn't believe that a summon could be better at healing than she was. Just then, they arrived at the boss room. A black ghost-like figure with glowing red eyes and the green light shining from its chest stood before them. He was known as Lich, one of the most infamous monsters among humans, famous for having once wiped out one of China's top guilds. Jiangsu admitted, "This boss is strong, and his army can't be harmed easily." They were surrounded, front and back. Even the monsters not eaten by the ants had resurrected. Jiangsu ordered them to shut the door. Yerim cast a magical barrier, but warned her, "I won't be able to hold it for long, maybe 5 minutes at most." Jiangsu confessed, "Without JinWoo, we won't be able to clear this gate." At that moment, Beru stepped forward. Lich stared at him confused. "Why is this shadow army attacking us? Aren't we allies?" Beru grinned and replied, "The king chose us personally, but he didn't choose you." "That's impossible," Lich argued. "I'll ask the king myself." Before he could move, Beru appeared in front of him in a flash, landing a direct hit to his chest. "You talk too much. Not fitting for someone who's about to die." To be continued. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Love y'all, brothers. Goodbye.